Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the BriarHillGroup at REMAX Promotion, host of Vancouver Island Time and Community Talks. I'm here with Andrew Plank of
Royal LePage. Hello, everybody.
and we're here for He Said, She Said, They Said, our weekly discussion about what's going on in real estate in Victoria. And so Andrew, how's your week been?
Busy. So busy. I think this last month, in fact, has been probably the busiest that I've experienced in probably a number of years. So, yeah. How about you?
July, I did 11 transactions. I actually don't even know how many I did in August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
but I'm finding like even though it's a long weekend, I listed a property on Friday, and it's very active in terms of the number of showings that we're getting. So I'm thinking that everybody's out there and they want to get in, and they're all afraid of the second wave, and so
Yeah,
that
there's definitely seems like there's a push to get in before the door closes again. So for sure, there's that. I'm finding, I think, like single family home with suite is the sweet spot for most buyers right now. A lot of like that's been my experience where if you list a home, and what I'm seeing all of our colleagues asking for is, please find me a suite, a home with a suite in a certain price point. Let's go.
right. And so what Andrew's talking is there is an informal network of communication between realtors when we have needs and wants, it's called, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, we just network with our colleagues in various means. So whether that's through online groups or just meeting them around the water cooler, you're asking, like Jane just asked me, how's it going? What's up? And this is how we get caught up on what's going on with not because we each work in our own little world, right?
Yeah.
So we have our own experiences, but it's good to hear how others are doing.
And I find like a lot of people who don't know what's happening in real estate, they don't work in this industry, and they don't understand how lonely it is. Actually, we do a lot of the work by ourselves. Do you find that?
Well, I don't find it particularly lonely, except that I do note that some of our colleagues really network strongly with other colleagues, but when you're really busy, you're concentrated and focused on your clients. And if you don't have an admin support person, you're doing a lot of admin as well. And even if you do have an admin support person, there's a lot of work that admin can't do, like, reviewing strata documents and so forth, that you're doing late into the night when, everybody else is sleeping or not actually viewing properties.
Right. So you're working
So it's
on
lonely
your
in that way.
pardon?
It's lonely in that way. It's just focused.
Right.
Yeah.
So this week we're going to be talking about condos. We have three different screenshots I'm going to show to you today. So the first one is just going over what's happened in the last week, and this is not a big one, so I'll just read it over. 276 new listings over the past 7 days, pending 255. So that's the number of listings that have gone unconditional, not quite taken possession.
It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. Almost every property listing, it's not necessarily those properties that are selling, but a 1-to-1 ratio of listings coming on market and listings coming off market.
Yeah, and the sold ones show how many people have completed. So that's high at 335. Yeah. This is traditionally a high number, don't you find?
Yeah, during this week for sure. Yeah.
And the price decrease 129. That's high, I think, as well. Usually it's around 70.
Right. So definitely, if you're not priced properly, there is a lot of activity and properties are selling, but people are also realizing that they need to make some adjustments if it's not happening for them.
And expired listing. So what that means is either the listing has, the sellers decide to take it off the market, or they're relisting it and probably at a lesser price. Do you find that? Do you do that?
Relist at a lesser price? Well, my clients do. Yeah. So we will you sign a listing contract. It's a certain length of time. Usually, let's say it's 3 months. It expires at the end of the 3 months. You're going to relist it. Sometimes people will expire their listings early to relaunch at a lower price. Sometimes it just expires and they will go on to either working with a different agent or not not or working with the same agent, or just not, they changed their plans. So the expireds are representative of what didn't work out for a certain time period anyway.
A plan. Yeah.
A plan. Yeah.
Okay, so we were wondering, Andrew and I were wondering, like, are there more condos coming on the market? Like, what's happening with the condo market itself? And so we decided to look into things a little more in depth. So which site should I show them first? Citified or
Well, let's start with the main stats, and we can go to Citified after.
Okay, so I'll read these because I have my glasses on.
Are you able to zoom in on any sections on this, Jane, or is that just not possible?
Yeah, probably. Hold on. How's that?
Oh, great. That's way better.
Okay, so in terms of number of properties listed, we're going to be looking at residential and condo. So this year, there were 526 single-family homes listed, and last month, the current month, oh, sorry, this is the current month. So August, I'm doing this August 31st. So this is August of 2020 versus August of 2019. So 526 listed single family homes in August of 2020 and 364 in August of 2019. So that's increase of 45%
over last year.
Last year. But overall, year to date, we're actually down 3,431 compared to 3,896. So we're down 12% overall number of single family homes. This month.
So what does that suggest to you, Jane?
Well, I think that we were really hit by the number of listings that did not get listed in March and April.
Right.
Things started to pick up again in May.
Exactly. So we're starting to see more listings than average coming up now, despite it being less listings overall. This month, last month was a lot more listings than we would normally see in August, because what we didn't see in the spring is being brought forward today.
Yeah, we're doing I call it a late spring market.
Yeah, very late. Okay.
So units sold 393 August 2020 compared to 287. So we're up 37%. Again, what you were saying, it's more active compared to normal. It's going to be a blip, that's for sure, in terms of like comparatively. And then, but what's cool is 20.
Sorry, I just want to point out we're bang on for actual listings sold. Versus last year.
Yeah.
It's a 0% change.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2,208 sold to date this year compared to 2,201 last year, all year.
Yeah.
And then the list to sale ratio is 75% this year compared to 79% last year. So that's interesting to me. So list to sale, because there's more units listed, that's why.
Right.
This year.
Dollar volume.
What do you think? Well, the dollar volume is 375 million in 2020 compared to 243 million last year, and the average house price went up nearly $100,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
awesome.
when you're looking at that, though, you have to think, if there's really high-end listings, they affect average price. It'd be interesting to look at median price.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of, I've been observing a lot of high-end properties listing, and that's always interesting. You get to see some really beautiful properties list, but I've also been seeing them sell, which is not as common. They often sit for up to a year or two if they're a really high-end property.
Yeah.
And there seems like there's definitely a lot of high-end properties been selling lately.
And we can see.
Call us about your high-end property that you want to sell. It's a good time.
So 900 to date this year, 903,000 was the average house price compared to 822,000 last year. And so we were postulating last week, that's a big word, that
I like it.
that the reason for that is because there's been a move from condos to homes. So why don't we look at the condos? Do you want to go over it? This is a month.
Right. So in August 2020, only 397 units were listed. Of those, the year before there were 317. So there's in the August 2019. So there's a 25% increase. Can we just switch really quickly back to the top there? To the single family homes. So you can see there was 45% increase in single family homes last month, but only a 25% in condos. And just keep that in mind when we're reviewing these, that condo numbers are much lower. We can go back down to the bottom. Sorry for the jump around there. So list to sell ratio, a little bit better now at 66%. You can see the dollar volume is much lower. We were in the 300s. That's because there's less condos listing and selling, obviously, and also the price point is a lot lower.
Where are you getting the 300?
No, up above from the sales of single family homes. There was like 375 million in single family home sales.
Yeah.
And our average price, this is a really interesting piece, is it's actually down 2% over last year. So where single family homes values have gone up on average by about 100,000, it looked like. And yes, we were talking luxury as well, but there are luxury condos, definitely. I've seen condo listings that are at 7 million and 11 million. But that market in that segment is definitely still a lower, it's gone down instead of up. So there's definitely a discrepancy between those two markets.
So 48 days to sell a house or a condo, 33 days to sell a home.
On average, yeah.
On average, whereas last year it was 48 to sell a house and 44 to sell a condo. So definitely.
They were closer, yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely it's, they were pretty much 1-to-1 last year. Now it's much quicker to sell a home. And then the active listings is interesting to me because it's 760 at the end of the month compared to 626. So that's up 21%. And single family homes is down 22%.
Mm-hmm.
So we're right. Doesn't it feel good? Okay, let's just look at the overall.
Hard to be right all the time.
So overall year is 2710 for this year compared to 2518 for last year.
Hey,
so,
Jane. Sorry to interrupt, but I think for future it would be great. We should try to mark these up because I'm having a hard time even following these numbers as we jump around. So anybody listening can hear what we're saying, but if you're trying to visually watch this, you don't have a way on this system to have a highlighter tool or anything?
Oh, I'm sure I could figure it out.
Okay, we'll figure that out for next week. Sorry, everyone.
It's okay. So units sold, though, we're down 1362 year to date compared to 1517. So we're down 10%. You know what I'll do is I'll just create a little my own form next week.
Yeah, we can do a slideshow. Yeah. Okay, so and then what have we got here? This is that average pricing again?
Units sold. Average pricing is this year is 480 compared to 468. Right. Year to date, so it's still up.
Right.
That makes sense to me, actually. I've been finding that I found the condo market in the spring went down, and there were a couple people, I would call them sharks, who were going after condos, wanting to have get a deal. Right.
Yeah. I've actually noticed a bump in the activity on my own condo listings, and this is just anecdotal. It's not following the stats necessarily, but my own condo listings were languishing for some time, and then very recently they've received much more attention, and the condos seem to be gathering some steam now. And that kind of makes sense to me because, and Jane, you can maybe speak to this as well, but I find that as one segment of the market goes up higher than another, it does tend to pull the other one, drag it along behind. There's kind of like a bungee effect, where as the gap widens, even if there's less demand for condos at this time, once the gap widens enough, condos just look that much more attractive. Do you find that?
We should, yes. We should talk about doing market analysis next week.
Like a CMA?
Yeah, and just like how we
process.
price homes, and I'd be interested to see what you do. But I find for me, it's I find like there are cusps which people want to buy in, and then if it goes over, they may not even see that, depending on what their mortgage broker has approved them for.
So case in point would be at the $1 million mark, it's much more difficult once you're over $1 million to finance a home. You need to have your 20% down. You can't do a high ratio mortgage. So correct. There's a lot of buyers out there with, let's say, enough savings to buy a home if they were putting 10% down over $1 million, but they're not allowed. So they can buy a home easily up to 1 million qualified, but because they don't have that extra money, they can't go further. So that's what puts a lot of heat on this under 1 million mark right now, and is what is probably keeping the market in some ways under the 1 million for many homes. But the gap is widening, and it's becoming, there's a lot of pressure at that point.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules in real estate that affect pricing. So one could be the new homes and GST numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So up to a certain number, your GST 750 with a brand new home, there's no GST. And then over up to the next Cusp is $1 million. That has to do with CMHC and the insurance. And so like there's just little things, first-time home buyers.
First-time home buyers for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we first got into real estate, first-time home buyers was 425.
Yeah.
Or 400 to 450. And then it went up to 425. And that affected where houses were priced, because all of a sudden you save a lot of money. I think it was $9,000 you saved if you managed to get a house for $400,000, whereas at 450 you were actually paying $459.
There were definitely buyers too who could afford to pay more, but they did not want to pay that extra fee. So they would purposely say, no, I don't want to, I'm a first-time buyer. I want to take advantage of this. I don't want to buy over the 425 range or the 450 range or whatever it gets to. So they keep that heat on in that segment, and they don't go above it if they can help it.
Exactly. Okay, let's just look at what's going on in the city overall. So we went to this website, cityfied.ca. And so we were just wondering, like, are condo buildings being built? That's our perspective, that these are all just taking off. And the answer is yes.
You can always tell you can look at the cranes in Victoria and count the cranes, and you can tell, what's going on out there. And there's definitely a lot of new construction happening. There's a lot of purpose-built rentals happening as well, which will impact the condo market, because a lot of buyers for condos are investors looking to rent. And with rental stock being taken up by other properties, that's going to affect the market. Supply and demand, of course.
Right. So there's 356 projects being proposed, approved, or under construction, being tracked by this website. 416 condo units are under construction in downtown Victoria. Those aren't necessarily rentals. I think the majority of rental units actually they don't have stats here really for West Shore, but I think the majority of rental units are coming up on the West Shore. So,
yep. And
I think that has to do with the price of land and return on investment. So 702 rental units are under construction in downtown Victoria.
Right. So what do you think is driving and I have my own ideas on this, but I'll ask you first, what do you think is driving the the move towards single family homes as opposed to condos right now, or the discrepancy in value proposition right now?
I think that because of COVID, a lot of people don't want to share space with other people. If they don't have to get in an elevator, they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are investors in condos who
Mm-hmm.
are felt very vulnerable, probably for the first time that I
Mm-hmm.
real estate, where there wasn't an advantage with the rules because of no evictions, and that doesn't mean you didn't have to pay your rent, by the way. But
Right.
also with the rental supplements, those affected people with. I know as a homeowner who has rental units, I felt vulnerable myself. So a lot of people just decided to get rid of them, and then there are also people who, because they have a secondary residence in Victoria, and if it was vacant, they'd be paying a vacancy tax this year.
Yeah,
What
there's
about
that too.
what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, there's all of the purpose-built rentals being built, as I mentioned already. There's been a lot of stuff in the news recently about insurance rates potentially going up for condos. It's getting harder to insure a condo. Towers are actually where I've really usually pushed people from a wood frame construction to a steel and concrete construction. Those are probably the taller towers are where you're going to see the rates going up higher, because when you have a flood on the top floor, it trickles down through all the different floors. All that laminate flooring or hardwood flooring needs replacing, and you're talking, huge amounts of money. And the insurers are starting to realize that and recognize the costs. So we're seeing fear around raising insurance rates or unavailability of insurance. We're seeing changes in Airbnb rules in the last few years downtown, plus the fact that there's nobody in town in terms of tourists. Go ahead.
Well, also, the condo rules supersede what the zoning is. So some buildings that were previously zoned transient accommodation, which was less than 30-day rentals,
Yeah.
for Airbnb are no longer allowing.
Right. So there could be, it goes the other way too. So there could be zoning that allows, we're going down a bit of a side rule, but this is actually an opportunity for some people, which is a little unrecognized, I think. But with the city changed the rules around zoning, they've de-zoned the short-term rentals, but they're grandfathered if they still continue to use them. So if a strata decides they're not going to allow short-term rentals and there's no short-term rentals happening for 6 months, then that building is no longer going to be allowed. So the number of buildings that allow short-term rentals is dwindling, but those that do are better and better investments for someone who does when we see a comeback after COVID. I find that one interesting.
But what people realize is, hold on, I need to scratch my head.
Yeah, we're both doing it. We're monkeys.
What people need to realize is that there is GST on the sale of your condo. If you were making $15,000 over 2 quarters or $30,000 a year, and so that when you go to sell, you need to eat that GST, because the buyer does not want that unfriendly GST tacked on the price of 5%. Surprise.
I found that when people are selling an Airbnb condo to another buyer for an Airbnb condo, they just put it through the business or eat it in that way. Yeah. But you're right. If you're buying it for your own purposes, you've got to watch that. And so we agents are tricky, and we put clauses into our buyers' contracts that say the seller is responsible for the GST if we can help it, if applicable.
And so this also happens with homes. So people need to be very careful.
Yes.
So you are allowed to have an Airbnb in Victoria if you have a license, and B, it is your primary residence. You can have a secondary accommodation down below. But when you go to sell, just understand that if you are going over those thresholds, your portion of the house that is being used for commercial which is the Airbnb, will be GST applicable.
Yeah, and that's the point is it's not just Airbnb, and Jane touched on that, but if it's any commercial use, then the GST could be applicable for that portion. So if you're running a business out of your home, for example. Other reasons, I think, for the discrepancy right now, of course, COVID, people have been staring at their walls in their small little condos. I think food security, having the ability to have a little extra space, a little bit of yard is really attractive to people. So we're seeing more people consider selling their condos and upsizing, or just getting out of the city itself. Having been lived through the lockdown in downtown Victoria, I can say there were times where it did feel really scary trying to go to the grocery store, and in the initial days where there was a lot of unknowns. Just how you really did start to think it wouldn't be nice to be away from all this. Schools, the unknowns around schools and the university, a lot more online learning. So the investment properties, or the properties where people have bought for their students going to school in the areas around the university, again, not needing them so much right now. So those would be my points around this. Is maybe why we're seeing at this point in time condos not quite getting the same attention. I do feel like it's going to make a comeback, though.
I do. So it's a good time to buy a condo, actually. Then it's not a hot market. So, and you're more likely to get a deal now than you will next fall or spring, I think, when the market picks up. And generally, markets like condos do have a seasonality around them that's different than homes. Homing. So in the spring, I always tell people, specifically in Saanich East or anybody on a bus route to UVic, best time to sell is in April or May, or in August, September, because you have a lot of parents who are looking for their kids who are going to university. And I find the listings just pop at that time.
Yeah, there's certain seasons for certain types of homes. Homes in Esquimalt posting season is good, for when the folks from the
or West Shore.
Where it's a little more affordable. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's your prediction for the rest of the year? Do you think, because I'm tired.
Well, yeah, I've always had a pet theory that the market is actually not just dictated by buyers and sellers, but by the realtors themselves. And my theory has been, summer, we say summertime generally, typically, is a dead time of year. And that's often because everybody's got vacations planned and the realtors are gone, and everybody is advising their clients, let's just wait till the fall. That didn't happen this year, partly because nobody is going on vacation, and partly because the market's been so hot that it's overcome those arguments, I think, from the agents. But I think we are all tired. What happens is there's a trickle-down effect. I think the most active, busy agents get overwhelmed and they're full capacity, and the less busy agents start to pick up the slack, and then it gets down to, people will choose any new agent they can find at one point. But it reaches that point where, the string breaks.
Right.
So I do think it's going to continue on. I think we're going to see it relatively steady-ish. It's going to be still busy and hot for a little while until it gets darker, colder, and potentially people start to get ill again, whether it's regular colds or COVID. We're going into cold and flu season, and I think that's going to create a lot more anxiety for everyone, and that will shut things down.
Yeah. I found this weekend, I actually just took 2 days off, and I was more relaxed after those 2 days, just being able to get away and just refresh. So we're not doing the 2-week holiday. We're doing more the quick getaway, 2 days, come back. And I find actually what's happened is the Cottage Country is going crazy. That market's just wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge interest in that. I've got a number of people looking for waterfront cottages or waterfront homes, and on the lakes and on the lakes and rivers and oceans of Island. So yeah, and that's in keeping with everything else we've said about COVID, I think, and the fact that I think people are tired of staring at their walls.
Yeah, and I think also if they don't have to go away, they're not going away. So if you can vacation on the island, then they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah, so the same thing happened with RVs. The RV market has gone insane. Apparently, yeah, because again, you can't fly anywhere, so people are spending big money on RVs. People are spending big money, I guess, or they can't find fridges and freezers. Again, speaking of food security, everyone is sort of looking a little differently at the world.
Right.
So they're changing their buying patterns, and that does include the idea of like, let's find a nice spot for us to share on a little vacation spot, a little plot of land.
And so I was saying to somebody, some of the islands are a bit scared because people are vacationing on their islands, so they're bringing illness with them. So I was thinking, if I lived on, like, I think Pender Island was a bit afraid because they were COVID free.
Mm-hmm.
Or you put a sign up, the whole island is in quarantine, so that nobody shows up. And you just kind of relax. My daughter keeps suggesting, why don't we just quarantine Vancouver Island? Why don't we just quarantine Vancouver Island? So,
yeah, I mean,
I know in Western Australia they did that. They quarantined the whole state.
yeah,
I have a friend who lives there, and I think they've had their first outbreak in months.
right,
They were
yeah,
having events with 30,000 people and living life all normally. And like, I've been watching her post, and I was saying, like, you're doing regattas, you're doing, soccer games, and she's like, we've been COVID free. So what happens is anybody who comes in is mandated to quarantine for 2 weeks before they're
right,
allowed to go.
yeah, yeah. Well, then that works. I mean, I was thinking it wouldn't, like, you have to have people driving trucks in with food and supplies to the island. We can't completely isolate. And there's people with family who come here, and there's if someone is sick or dying, either here or elsewhere, and family wants to come visit or go visit, it's, I guess it's the risk versus reward you got to consider. I don't personally agree with quarantining, but I love the idea of being COVID free and having everybody able to gather again.
Yeah.
So
I think we're just going to have to learn to live with it over the next years. Do you carry sanitizer with you when you're showing properties?
Yeah, sanitizer, gloves, masks. Been buying a few different masks because I need to have extras for clients if they don't show up with one. So absolutely.
And this is a requirement of the board and sellers, and actually our company, my company.
Well, and also it's just best practices from the province as well, right? So, I mean, I'm not reading up on all of the exact best practices, other than I try doing my best to follow all the protocols that we are coming up with. But I can't say I'm up on top of everything that Bonnie Henry has told us.
And I'm finding that people are pretty respectful of that anyway.
Yes.
And in a condo, you want to be respectful of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. A rental. I have heard stories of people actually recording people when they go into the homes. And we all have, heard of the nanny cams and those things. So when an agent is showing a home, if they're walking through and they're not gloved up and they're not wearing a mask and their clients are all touching everything, it's pretty disturbing. And we're trying to control that and keep everybody safe. So it's good to have those, and it's good to realize that, there's a reason that we need to do this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So,
yes.
We're going to meet next week. Let's talk about pricing your property to sell.
Right. Okay. So market analysis, like process and what we think of and how we look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys, every Monday at 10 a.m., please tune in to He Said, She Said, They Said with Jane Johnston and Andrew Plank. Andrew, how do we get in touch with you?
You can reach me through my phone, 250-360-6106, or check out my website, www.andrewplank.com. If you go to the bio section, you'll find a video a little bit more about myself. And thanks everybody for watching. How about you, Jane?
My name's Jane Johnston. I'm with the BriarHillGroup, and one day I'll tell you the story behind that name. You can reach me at 250-744-0775, and my website's BriarHillGroup.com. All right, everybody.
I know the story.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about your motto as well.
Okay.
Okay. Talk to you later. Everybody, see you next Monday, 10 a.m. right here. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.